Hello everyone, welcome to Naren's Eye with MS. This is Naren, and it's time, considering it is still throwback week, Funny Fridays. So this Funny Friday, I actually thought about what can actually be funny. And honestly, whatever I tend to find funny, other people don't end up finding funny. But one thing that I do remember kind of being funny was the fact that, earlier on in my life, like when, I knew I had MS. This is, I want to say, early college life, so you can say. So early college, I would still think of myself as being more or less normal, right? It usually ends up happening because your EDSS isn't very high, you can do pretty much everything, and you definitely have reserves of energy. And I definitely, and the one thing that would actually end up happening is I travel a good distance in between certain things, right? Between, let's say, friends' places to college, um, to different college buildings. And so, a lot of times, what would end up happening is, I would tend to have classes which were, right in the center of campus, all the way to like one corner of campus. And what would end up happening is sometimes, when especially in earlier years, when you tend to have back-to-back classes, so you have a class from, let's say, 9 to 10:30, and then 10:30 to 12, then 12 to 2, then 2 to 3, then 3 to 5, and then 5 to 9, that kind of thing. People don't normally tell you that, oh yeah, you've got 10 minutes to get to your next class, which could be a bit of a distance away. But then while doing that, you also, nature might call, and sometimes nature might call for something that is, you know a little more time consuming. So as a result of doing that, one thing that I ended up doing was I actually would, and this is something true that actually ended up happening, was I had a paper map of the campus, and I would so I had exploratory days when I would pretty much mark where all of my classes were, and I would mark all of the buildings that were in between, let's say, two classes, right? Especially if the classes would happen in different buildings. And I would pretty much rank different bathrooms in these buildings depending on four aspects: cleanliness, availability, privacy, and comfort. Right? These four things were so important because, I mean, just imagine this. You've gotten out of, let's say, biology at 10:20 a.m. Your next class is maybe something dealing with engineering, which means it's on one corner of campus, and your biology class just happens to be in the center of campus. And so you have 10 minutes to get to your next class, which is at least 5 to 600 meters away. But then in the middle, you also have to go and relieve yourself. So, and I had gotten so good at this. I mean, this is something that I can actually pat myself on the back for, because I knew exactly that, if it's time to go, I knew down to the amount of time I had in terms of like seconds, as to how much time I had to do my business, clean up, wash my hands, and get out of the bathroom in time so that I can reach my next class before the professor began talking. And sure, the first few years, I mean, I definitely took at least 1.5 years to perfect the craft. Is that the best way to say it? Um, perfect the, perfect the, perfect the process, the journey, essentially. And I think that's why, for even a few years after college, my walking speed was very, very fast, because I knew that speed walk if I could speed walk without having to run, because running shakes things up. um, so if I could speed walk, I could actually focus on getting faster at speed walking. I could technically have a really good time in a very comfortable, private, um, accessible, and honestly a pleasurable experience in between two classes where there was only 10 minutes available. And now, you might think that, okay, this story is not that funny, but here's where the punchline comes. So, like I said, it took me about a year and a half to perfect, which, at least find out which bathrooms were the most inviting. So it took me 1.5 years. But guess what started happening once I got into my second semester of my second year? Well, to make it easier on you, the time I had in between classes suddenly got a lot longer. So I did have classes back to back, and so I had plenty of time to go to whichever bathroom I wanted, in whichever building I wanted on campus, even buildings that I didn't have classes in, because I had that much time to, you know, use the facilities. So, when you put it into perspective that I had spent so many hours, so much time planning out, like, literally sitting with, a map of campus, noting down, making different notes about, okay, if I have to go into this building, I should go to the third floor or the fourth floor, or maybe even, the basement of this building, because, the better bathrooms are there. Or there were also certain buildings that were interconnected, and usually, if you had a class in one building, and but the better bathroom was on the first floor of a connected building, and the connection was through the basement, I could actually chart out how much time it would take. So I had done all of this scientific research, and I can call it scientific research because it was time bound. It had certain variables that were important. There was definitely certain controls that I had applied to this entire experiment. And despite that, despite all of that work, all of that undertaking, all of the trials and error, I mean, they weren't really error, but yeah, I mean, the errors were, finding a not so pleasurable experience, but essentially, doing all of this work and coming up to a point in my college life where none of it mattered. And that is where it gets funny. So, a lot of times, and I think there's a lesson over here that, you can take things seriously. You can always make certain things very serious. But at the end of the day, you never know what can happen in the future. So, you always have to take any undertaking, take any project that you do believe in, take it with take it with a little you know asterisk attached to it, knowing that very soon all of this information, very soon all of the knowledge that you gathered in doing something might actually not be applicable anymore. So that hopefully is a little bit funnier to notice that over the course of a year and a half, I visited buildings. I mapped out certain things, right? A lot of times, one thing that does end up happening is, you have, let's say, a map of your college campus. You know what the buildings look like. I mean, you know the shape of the buildings. You don't know the insides of the buildings. You don't know the hallways, the corridors, where the bathroom is located. So you have to do all of that research. You have to time yourself. You have to walk. You have to perfect you know, the you have to perfect speed walking for that matter, just to be able to give yourself that extra 30 seconds, that extra 1 minute, so that you can actually relax just a little bit. So you can do all of that work, but then at the end of the day you can just end up having a schedule where there is enough time that you can actually do all of that, and you don't have to literally you know do something which ends up you know being a longer than normal experiment, right? A longer than normal thing. But that is the funny Friday story that I wanted to share with you. And of course, apart from this, so yes, please do share your thoughts, your insights, your experiences as to if you did something that ended up being a very futile effort just because certain things that were sort of the constraints for why you were conducting this venture just suddenly cease to exist. So yes, please do share such experiences so that we can get the conversation started. And before I end this, I do want to say one thing, that we are reaching the weekend, so there are only 2 days left to throwback week. But the one thing I did not realize is there is a certain day that I can um, talk about on Sunday, which would be Super Sunday, but I actually do not have anything for Saturday. So what does that mean? That means that tomorrow, as in Saturday, I might actually have to start a new series. So there is going to be a new series coming tomorrow, It is also, I think it is going to be day 237. So, nothing too special, but yes, there is going to be a new series. So, hopefully, you are excited for that. I still don't know what it's going to be about, but I do hope that it is something that, will make sense for a Saturday. So, with that being said, this is Narain's Life with MS. I am Narain, and of course, I hope you are ready for the weekend. You have some great things planned for your weekend. Uh, and of course, I hope that you also are planning to rest a little bit during this weekend. But with all of that said, here is me wishing you a good night, sweet dreams, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.